I'm winning. I'm making money. I'm growing my companies. I'm crushing it as a father and a husband, but I wake up in the morning and I just don't feel joy. I don't feel fulfilled. I'm feeling lonely. I wanted to ask you, Ruslan. I know a few months back, you and I were actually sitting down and we were talking on a Zoom call because we're actually across the country from each other, right? You're over in Seattle and I'm in Chicago. And it was interesting because we both been blessed to have had success and be what I would consider high achieving men. And we were discussing the topic, which is why do we feel unfulfilled sometimes, even after winning, like a huge win? And in your case, right, you've had huge wins in your businesses and with your family, and we'll get into that later. But I think there's a lot of guys out there that, they're asking themselves that same question, which is I'm winning. I'm making money. I'm growing my companies. I'm crushing it as a father and a husband, but I wake up in the morning and I just don't feel joy. I don't feel fulfilled. I'm feeling lonely. So I don't know if you remember that conversation, but what was going through your mind during that time? And I don't know if you want to jump in real quick and give the audience a little bit of some advice here or some perspective on what was going on at that time.
Yeah, it's kind of like a constant feeling, right? Everything's happening, everything's good, but for some reason, you have no one to share it with. And it's just a feeling that it just keeps happening and there's not a reason for it. And then when you start talking about it, I think that's when you realize it's a common feeling around people that are constantly moving. It's guilt. There's a lot of things involved there.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because I remember the convo, and just to put some perspective behind it for everyone on this call, Ruslan and I actually met through a business mastermind, and it's pretty cool. I hope you're okay with me sharing this, Ruslan, to the audience, but you built a business basically to almost $20 million here in 4 years, and you're launching multiple companies, serial entrepreneur, winning in life, beautiful family, 4 kids, married for 15 years. You just celebrated your 15-year anniversary. He's got a tan right now because he just got back from Cabo with his beautiful wife, and it's really cool to watch. And Ruslan and I became really close and became friends. But this was actually one of the first topics we kind of bonded over, and it was interesting because I've been talking to a lot of high achieving men. Just in general, in the work that I do, and I'll share a little bit of my story here in a second. But one of the biggest things that comes up all the time is, Matt, I'm winning. I'm succeeding. I have money. I have the accolades, right? I have the great family. We look pretty in our family photos, right? But I still just don't feel like I have a network. I don't feel like I have a brotherhood, or I have people I can go to and share my wins with, right? And share my losses and share the challenges, because the people that I currently am around maybe can't relate to it. And so I know you just kind of shared, Ruslan, around that, but I know as you kind of have expanded and grown, right? We talked a lot about this, is just the concept of finding kind of those people. And I don't know if you want to share a little bit around when you were going through that, kind of emotion and going through that situation where you were crushing it. You woke up and you're like, Matt, I want people that I can relate to, but there's not a lot of them that I can do that with. What were some of the thoughts that were going through your mind around that time?
Yeah, I feel like I was feeling a little lost, trying to find myself at the same time, but feeling guilty that everything is happening good. People are complaining about other things, and I'm sitting here and complaining about finding people that I can relate to. So it was a combination of those. And I mean, I remember the call, right? And I'm just sitting there, and you're like, hey, that's a common feeling. And even that alone, right? Just on a Zoom with someone that, whether understands it or not, but at least relates to it, was a huge thing for me, right? Being, like you said, being part of the mastermind, sharing wins, and no win is too small, no win is too big. And I think that's the biggest thing, because around your circle you grow up with, people around you, it's, you want to share the small things. A lot of times the big things come off as bragging. It comes off as something that it's not, the intent of it wasn't that. So you just hold back, but when you hold back, you're holding it all in. So I think that was the biggest thing for me, is getting into a mastermind, getting into a group where a group of winners and a group of where people want to get better and don't feel bad if they do. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. And I mean, it's still a thing. I mean, that's why we're here. I mean, there's no other reason for it.
I freaking love it, man. And again, obviously, Ruslan and I have known each other now for a couple of years, and it's cool because we've gotten very, very close. And so we know a lot about each other's families and lives, and it's awesome. And what he just said is spot on, is that just to give a quick perspective here. So I have another business. It's a business consulting company where we work with high achieving business owners. And interesting enough is, yes, we teach them sales, marketing. We teach them how to grow companies, be smart with their money, all of the business, related topics. But I was talking to my other partner in that company, and he always asks, like, what's the topics that people want to talk about, Matt? And we happen to be in home services, right? So we're in a very male dominated market. I would say 60% of my coaching calls were around limiting beliefs and loneliness and not being able to relate to their network. And it was interesting because, again, the reason the folks are in that group is because they need someone to give them coaching and love and give them cheat codes on how to grow their business. But a lot of it was mindset and, kind of being able to break through those limiting beliefs so they can keep expanding and growing and make an impact in the world. And it's really, really cool because I've been there before too, Ruslan, and that's what we talked heavily about is, I remember I was 19 when I started my first business, and I think I've been a high achiever most of my life, through sports and school and all of that. And it was interesting because along the way, what ends up happening, right, when you lose your sports team, right, when I was on, all-star teams and I'm around other high achieving athletes, right, we're pushing each other, we're holding each other accountable. It's kind of cool. You can kind of see behind me here that's my, high school championship ring, not because I want to brag about high school, but we've been winning, I've been winning in life, but I've also had major failures. And the interesting part is when you're winning, like you said, I think one of the biggest challenges for high achieving men specifically is that they really fall into where they feel isolated, right? Because they don't want to go brag to maybe their current network, because maybe their current network can't comprehend, like you said, people were actually stressed out about real things, right? They're stressed out about other challenges. And our biggest challenge at that time was I'm winning so well, but I don't feel good about it. Right. So, so what
sounds crazy to say, but that's how it was. That's how it is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's interesting. So, I think that, on this podcast specifically, I think we should share, Ruslan, why we came together, because I think it's important for the folks that are listening to understand it, but also note, what we're trying to solve for. And interesting enough is we came together, both of us, again, entrepreneurial, serial entrepreneurs, and we came together and we realized that in our current networks of high achieving men, there wasn't a mastermind that was really focused around helping men become not isolated, right? Or be able to give them a brotherhood. And something we noticed is a lot of high achieving leaders, a lot of high achieving men have been that way most of their life. Not that people can't change and become high achieving later on, but oftentimes they're just built a certain way, right? They're high octane, they're competitive, they're ambitious. And oftentimes those folks come from sports, they come from the military. They had maybe a really strong fraternity in college. And when we get older, when we're in our 30s now, like Ruslan and I are, I'm creeping on that 40 mark here soon. But what we've seen is when you lose those quote unquote brotherhoods, right? I feel like there's this like massive missing epidemic right now in the world where we don't do what my grandfather, right, I think he's in his 80s, I think he's 87. He has a group of guys, 4 of them that are hopefully, I haven't talked to him recently in the last 3 months, but hopefully they're still trucking along. But for the last 20 years, every Wednesday they get together for coffee and they just get together and they talk life. And it's interesting because in our life now, like in our world, we don't really do that anymore, right? Where we don't get together and we don't have those kind of groups or certain things that we do. And I think that that's one of the missing ingredients right now to success. And then also from a high level perspective, and if anybody's big into longevity like I am, I want to live as long as I can, not forever. I'm not one of those weirdos, but I want to live as long as I possibly can. And one of the number one scenarios that we've seen is that relationships matter. And if you go Google this or you use AI, you're going to notice that in the longevity side of the world, that from a high level perspective, that your quality of relationships matter. And that's really what we're trying to solve for here. Is we're looking for other men out there that we can work with, and we can build a brotherhood and actually grow together.